So we're going to talk about a subject that's near and dear to my heart, application performance. So let's just get underway here. The abstract was all about, let's talk about the APM space, let's talk about the changing nature of it. By the way, video-wise, is there a specific place I should stay?
Oh, you're good.
Okay. And how the APM space is evolving moving forward. So first off, over here. The agenda is really going to be talking about how APM is evolving, but specifically in the last couple of years, it's really stepped up the pace of the evolution. So I'll call it a revolution for now. We'll get into the functional areas of APM as defined by the industry, specifically by Gartner. What's current state of the art, and then how do we move beyond application monitoring to application management? Okay. So first off, let's get into goals to help you understand, clarify what doing APM with current technology actually means, what are the correct techniques that are out there, what's state of the art, and leave you with some tools to evaluate decisions moving forward. Now, I'm guessing because you're here, you're either in the state where you have no monitoring, some monitoring, considering alternatives. So really what we want to do is kind of lay out what's there, and without any specific vendor twists, we'll just say this is what's acceptable in the current practices, and figure out where you might have gaps. So, requisite me slide. So I've been in this space for a long time, started off in operations, got into system programming, digital equipment, have been in a support role, I've answered those calls, so I know what it's like trying to keep a 20% operation running. Was around the birth and the slow agonizing death of the ARM standard, if any of you bounced into that. It proved a lot, but it also proved what we couldn't do. So I've got digital equipment, Precise, Radiant, AppDynamics, 2 tours of duty with BMC, both by acquisition. And I've been at this for 25 years, and it helps some of the biggest customers in New England and elsewhere get APM strategies in place and optimize some of their applications for web. Okay, I did do this with an idea towards this being game 7. We're going to move past. It was sad. It was sad. How do you hack away a game in the last minute and 17 seconds? But we won't get into that. Why do we need APM? Well, because performance, specifically web performance, impacts business. We're going to talk more about that as we move forward. But Gartner's really taking the lead on this. And specifically, there's an individual at Gartner, former client of mine, who worked at Thomson, Joe McDowell, who has really taken a good look at the tools that are out there and made it harder for vendors to claim APM solutions that they don't have a complete offer. So it's really being driven by the business use cases, not by, hey, it has adapters for Java, it has adapters for .NET, you can look at this and look at that. That's a technical definition. But this is all driven by business need. So here's the definition. So basically this is the flow that you have to be able to manage if you want to be an APM vendor. So an end user does something, starts a request. That request goes off and executes something. There are some back-end systems, and there's a series of them that have to operate with software somewhere, either hosted or an on-premises solution. And then data is delivered back to an end user, and everything is completed successfully. Okay, that is what an application is made of, and you have to be able to monitor that and manage it. So this was the space as of 2011. There's a lot of vendors in there. Okay, and they come from all different stripes. So let's talk about these. First off, you have the guys who are doing network quality of service. Right? So that's a flavor of it. You have folks that are sniffing protocols. That was one of them. You have guys who are out there doing, let's go, infrastructure management, managing events. You have guys that are testing sites from outside, again, all flavors of APM. You have bytecode instrumenters. All different techniques, all different results, all different depth of understanding of what the APM marketplace should be. So, again, that was 2011. The definition I just showed you was released to this audience and then said, we're going to reevaluate you based on that use case. Sorry, don't forget the technology and law, I forget this. The use case got harder, so what happened was a lot of vendors dropped out of the Magic Quadrant for Gartner. And there's several reasons for that. First of all, there were acquisitions. So you saw Dynatrace and Gomez disappear because they were acquired by a Compuware. Quest went to Dell. But you also saw folks who pulled themselves out of the quadrant because they realized, we're either not going to qualify at all, or we're going to qualify poorly. And we'll end up down in that lower left quadrant. So we went from 29 vendors down to 14. And if you want to see, I have a link here as well. If you want to get a full report and all the ratings, you can get that from us. All right, so the space cleared up a lot, the vision cleared up a lot from 2011 to 2012. And there's going to be another refocusing this year as well, because it comes up in August. All right? So the way Gartner split the marketplace up, I'm not going to read it here, I'll show you visually what all these things mean, but they basically said in order for you to be an APM vendor, a viable APM vendor, by our definition, you have to do that first use case about the end user, but you have to have technology which does these things. Manage end users, discover application architecture. You have to be able to do deep dive transaction profiling, you have to be able to do component deep dives, and you have to be able to do analytics across all those different measures. So let's talk about these different disciplines, because this is really where it all comes together. So end user management, well, there's really a couple of ways that you can do this, and there's a couple of audiences you have to suffice. I'm sorry, let me build it up. So these are the 5 areas of APM that they're defining. But I'll talk about them individually. End user experience, there's really a couple of ways you can attack this. You have real users, for example, one would think you have to have them. So you want to be able to manage the devices that are coming in, you want to see their experience as it's being reviewed. But there's also this concept of a synthetic end user. And this is an equally valid approach when there are no users natively on your site. It's 3 a.m., I'm selling shoes, nobody's there. I want to have somebody buy shoes, or I want to have a robot hit my site. So synthetic and real together comprise an end user experience solution. Right? But you really want to be able to see the end users, you want to see the robots and know which is which, and understand the performance. Now, technology mapping is looking about all the components that are required to make an application function. You got load balancers, firewall servers, VMs, JVMs, .NET, CLRs, databases, backend, message queues. All that stuff has to work for this application to even be functional. So go find all those things in this area, in this discipline. Find all those things and discover what makes the application talk. What talks to what, in what order, what does it expect back. That's application discovery. Okay? And discover it from the executions, not necessarily just go on inventory of everything and figure out who's got port 8090 open, who's got port 3136 open. Oh, I think he's a database, I think he's a web server. There's a lot of tools that can do that, but really discover this from the flow of the end users. Right? Tracing across tiers. As the application goes through, like that, change those. Tracing across tiers, all that hop-to-hop stuff. Right? If you have 7 JVMs today, what order do they execute in? This is really looking at transaction tracing. This is not watching network flows. This is actually being embedded within the application in some form that's watching the requests as they depart from one tier and enter another. Okay? Looking at things like backend mainframes and message queues. Being able to look across all the Java tiers, .NET tiers, and understand the complexity of the application. Right? And being able to see into the backend components without necessarily having visibility into the individual components. I may not have visibility to DB2, but I want to know that something went off to DB2 or went off to a CICS spindle and had to come back. All of those are things that we need to know about. Maybe we don't have instrumentation that's going to sit on. Right? Now we get into application component deep dive. Largely at this point we're talking about middleware, and we're looking at Java and .NET primarily, although there are other viable solutions that can do it as well. But really we're getting into the container. I want to see methods, classes, I want to see execution paths, I want to see sequence diagrams. That's the code. All right, so now we're actually getting into deep dive within the application itself. So timing of departures and understanding what the backend systems are contributing, but also putting in the context of what was the initiating call. And capture arguments to provide data context. Thank you for telling me you went off to an MQ server. What queue did you enter onto? What was the ID that you submitted to that, so that I can keep track of you as you come back? Right? And the last bit here is the being able to put performance and analytics all together. So I have all these measurements, I got all that stuff I just measured. How do I put it together so somebody who may not be a disciplinarian in any of these things, or a subject matter expert in any of these things, can at least understand what's the performance of my store. I know it has all that stuff, but I got to be able to look at it and go, green, red, good, bad, how are we doing? Okay? So it does take a very abstract series of measurements and puts it in some context. But the business largely the ones that we can consider. Okay? So why do businesses care about APM? Well, we don't have to look far ways to find situations where websites have let businesses down. Just last Friday, we saw the grounding of planes because the reservation system crashed for Southwest Airlines. Target had a big miss on a huge fashion. They're trying to get into the high fashion business. One of the first Italian designers set up the website, fell over. Right? So they do impact the business, and your audience is ruthless and immediate. They will not let that kind of information sit on it. So businesses are increasingly sensitive to this kind of bad press. Okay? So the idea here is let's not let that happen, and you just have to look, little ways to the web and find it. This is actually an interesting one, the worst 15 web failures of 2012. A lot of these guys, these are the movers and shakers of the web. We got Facebook, Amazon, Salesforce, GoDaddy. It's everything. Okay, so let's take a quick look back. All right, so we talked about what Gartner thinks the APM space is. Let's take a look back and find out how we got to this point. So each team selected and used a different tool set that was specifically focused on their needs. It had walls up and didn't provide input or output to any other teams. System tools were used as proxies for APM. If I monitor enough stuff and I have enough piles of data, I can figure out what application performance is. None. Now, if the heap is this busy and I have this many threads and I have this much idle latency, everything is good. What does login look like? I have no idea. Right? We had no forensics, so we're always trying to recreate the problem. Somebody called and said they couldn't X. Well, let me see if I can X. Oh, I can X, so it must be fine. Right? Just restart the app every 8 hours. We're going to run out of thread every 23 hours, so every 22 hours we'll restart the table. Why? Because it works. What we have found is this is still a current state for a lot of companies. I'm in this business daily. I talk to people, what are you using? Oh, we got solar, we got the. What are you using for APM? We'll sprinkle this in a dash of that. Okay, so we've come a long way. This used to be the thought. If I had system utilization, I had application performance. That was, 80s and 90s. And now we found out that that wasn't the case, so that's not doing it. So we got to substitute something for that. Process health. We'll go to process health. The system health is too vague. So process health. Look at the process performance. Now that's not application performance. Network flows. Network flows. That's going to be because that joins everything together. If I have network flows understood, latency between servers, I have application performance. No, you don't. Now we're getting into code. So now we're getting into code. We're cracking into bytecode. We're starting to look at profile level. We're figuring out what's going on. We're getting closer. That's still an application performance. Now we decide we're going to synthetically test the site. We're going to bang against it from the outside. We're going to run scripts inside. We're going to figure out if we're reachable from the four corners of the globe. We're going to time that performance. We're going to measure the response. We're going to look at the hash of the return and see if it's valid. That's all application performance, isn't it? No, it's not. ADTM is all of that. All right, it's all of those pieces. You have to have system. You have to understand network flows. You have to understand the synthetic and the real users together. All of that encompasses APM. So it's an additive approach. It's not, nothing drops out of the equation. So we still have to have all of the knowledge of the infrastructure and the execution path, but we still have to have the discipline that sits on top of it and says, can users transact the way we want them to? So, ARM. At this point, we have, so vendors got together, locked the doors and said, we're all going to play nice together. We're going to come up with a standard that allows us to monitor our applications. This ARM consortium was put together, and they said, look, we're going to design a standard where you can assert tags all the way through your code. They had libraries for C++, they had it for Pascal, they had it for everything. They said, look, we're going to put together the tagging nomenclature. We're going to put together the standard that you're going to use to identify pieces of your code. And you're going to build your code with ARM tags in it. And that's going to be the gold standard. You have ARM your application, everything's fine. 10 years, everybody said, are you going to ARM? Are you going to ARM? Oh yeah, we're going to ARM. But nobody ever did it. And the reason was largely because you're asking developers who are, if you think about what a developer has to do, they build features and they have deadlines to give features to the public. They're not gold on having their application monitored. It's not something that he's going to hold up a bonus and say, but you didn't ARM your code. Yeah, but I wrote the new search engine. Oh, okay, well, here's yours. You don't want developers maintaining tags because it's not really their discipline. All right, so it fell apart largely because the onus was placed on the developer, not on the business. So the business wants, the business needs to be able to make it happen. Developers were always saying, hey, I'll get to the ARM stuff later. Later became never. All right, so it never got it out. I think there was I saw exactly one ARM application out there that was built as a reference, and even IBM C and HP. In fact, one of our customers a couple of weeks ago came to us with a CD application. No monitoring built in whatsoever. Surprising. Okay, so what do we learn? Well, developers are designed to build apps, not to monitor them, all right? So this is actually something that I found that I think really kind of summarizes it. So with your 4 parents, are any Monty Python fans in the house? I'm not sure if you've seen this yet, but
Your last job!
it's operations.
I think more than reasonable. Consider that. Consider
Has anybody seen that before? No? I gotta kick out of that. It summarizes it pretty well. That's the battle between dev and ops constantly. You know, you ready? Are you ready? Okay, here it comes. Alright, so development's not really good at doing the tagging and putting information together, but what it did make clear was that tagging is a necessary evil. There is no way you're going to be able to do this without putting some sort of discrete signatures into the code that can be followed. Alright? So we can cross that Rubicon. Correlation is never going to supplant real direct instrumentation. I can watch everything from the outside. I can try to time-based correlate, utilization-based correlate, and correlate every way you want, but it's never going to replace the discrete naming of things and following of things. All right? 100% code coverage was also impossible because of the overhead of doing that. If I have to insert all my code and I've got all those additional instructions, I can't do that. That's not reasonable. All right? And the vendors themselves are unlikely to provide the visibility themselves. Right? So you're not going up to an HP or IBM and saying, I need you to insert your code so I can measure your performance. So the vendors themselves are unlikely to do that. And that's what we've seen time and time again. All right? So, but you're also getting pressure from the business because the business is realizing that web adoption and web appeal is really turning into brand and money. So the fact that you have a good website means people stay on it, they buy more, they come back. The DevOps boundary is also starting to change quite a bit because you're finding that there's a lot more release agility. The agile release process pushes releases faster. We have weekly releases now. We used to have monthly or multi-monthly. You even have places that are doing releases in prod multiple times a day. I think that's Facebook's big thing now. They're doing 7 or 8 releases in prod every day. So the idea is that you have dev and ops are being forced together. They're in the same spin cycle. All right? Ops is constantly receiving new stuff. They can't possibly understand what they're deploying. Dev is always writing the next thing, and they're constantly getting into this spin cycle. Okay? You also have cloud entering in this. Not only do you have faster release cycles, but they're being put in places you may not have direct control over. So now it's on premises. A lot of open source stuff. You may even have third-party owners. So every time you want to do a release, you got to call up AT&T or call up Verizon and say, "Would you please?" Right? However, you still have demanding users, increasingly demanding users. They're not getting any easier on applications, and they're not bringing any fewer platforms to run them. To a lot of people, this is your application, right? How are you going to make all that stuff you built run on this thing so that I can transact with you? And these are getting more and more capable, but screens are smaller, and networks aren't what they used to be, and all that. So and you're writing applications to satisfy a very diverse user community who have very high expectations of what you can do. Right? I like this study. This is something that Google, and I know this came from the Velocity conference a while ago, but who knew that both Google and Bing were doing some testing in the back end and actually slowing down responses to end users. So what they found was, as they slowed the pages down, they basically insert server delays in your responses. They were finding that the tolerance for users was about 1 second before they lost about 3% of the people that would buy stuff. So we talk about, you're lighting up an e-commerce site. What is it at what point do people just get sick with it and walk away? Well, really what it is about a second. So you lose 3%, once you get to 2 seconds, you lose about 4.5% people. That's it. We'll buy something else. Right? So they were actually tweaking the knob. And these tests would run for weeks. For 4 weeks they'd take into A/B testing with 1 second delay. 6 weeks, A/B testing with 2 seconds delay. So if you were surfing around at that time, you had no idea they were doing this behind the scenes, but they were confirming that that was a problem. Okay, so there's a big problem. There's a lot of things going on here. So let's discuss the things you're looking for in this space. And again, I'm presenting this kind of like a shopping. It's like, okay, we know we have gaps. We might, and some of these you may already have. But let's talk about what the sort of fully rendered APM solution will have, what's state of the art, and let's talk about what these things can actually bring to the table. Okay? So first off, low overhead. There's really two schools of thought when you're designing APM. You start from a profiler methodology, or you start from a sampling methodology. Profiler, I give you a pattern, you check your code into it, you give me every one of those back. Okay? The sampler, it looks to see what's important, and it starts to pull those reports out. Right? So it's two fundamentally diametrically opposed approaches. So profile is really designed for a dev test use case. Everything's important, give me everything, I'll figure it out. But you tend to tail off when you move into production. Not to pick on vendors, but this has been a lot of these problems for a long time. I put it in, I get lots of visibility in development, but there's no way I'm rolling the thing into production because I can't sustain that kind of overhead. But I will start it up. I'll embed the agent, and I'll turn on transaction just when I need it, and hopefully things don't come to a screeching halt when I do it. All right? It has to be built to be lightweight and production safe. It has to have enough smarts that it doesn't do everything, because not everything is important. Not every method you execute is going to be important. There are some you want to capture all, there's some you don't. There's some you want statistical sampling. So it has to be built to be production safe. All right? It has to be something you can run full-time without impacting your application. That's just common sense. Right? I can't pay the penalty of 5%, 10% overhead in my production application. That's server, that's network capacity, that's disk I/O. I can't do that. Right? Automatic discovery. This is huge. I need something that's going to discover all of the components that are part of my application. Right? I have to understand the interactions of those application components. And I want to know it because they're the ones that are actually active. There's a lot of static discovery tools out there. I can buy one today, drop it into a network environment, and say discover, and it'll go around and pull, and it'll port scan, and it'll figure everything out. It'll come back with this huge list of stuff. Thank you. How much of that represents what's required for my e-commerce site? I don't know. Here's a bunch of stuff. So you want these application maps to be discovered from real interactions of people doing things. Right? So it has to come from actual interactions. It shouldn't require input from a human. Humans are fallible. So you could say, yeah, we have 5 JVMs that are running our LDAP environment. That's 3 today. All those requests, they go off to Amazon for fulfillment. No, some of them don't. So don't let the architect's operations and development have to sit down and sketch out what the environment's going to be. Discover, it has to automatically discover. It has to understand what the important actions are. It has to come up with reasonable naming conventions. Why? Because you're constantly releasing new stuff. Right? So if you're doing things like struts and JMS and RMI, there's reasonable names. These reasonable ways you can direct names off of that. I want to look at the argument. I want to look at the URL path. I want to look at the queue that it's submitting things onto. Those are good naming conventions to start with. Sure, I can move it off of that, but I want to install this thing and let it just discover and present me with something that I can understand. All right? And you want to baseline everything. All right? If you're going to do sampling, which we're kind of deciding we kind of have to, you have to baseline everything so you know why you're sampling. Why did you give me that record, not the one that was below the line? What was the cutoff that you were using? Right? Because you don't know what resource it is that's actually going to starve you in performance. Is it heap? Well, maybe it's heap today. Is it thread pool? Maybe it's thread pool tomorrow. Is it JDBC connections? Maybe it's going to be that next week. Everything has to be baseline. Right? It has to be able to gracefully serve the master and gracefully serve the minions. It has to be able to give the dashboards up to the business that they need to see in context that they can understand. Logins, add to cart box. Okay, good. I get red. That's bad. So it has to be able to talk about things that they care about, but it also has to be able to move in context on the gory detail. They come to you and say, why is that red? You want to be able to answer in context, that's red because these things aren't working. Right? Can I build role-based views that satisfy a multitude of audiences? Sure, that's absolutely going to be state-of-the-art today. I can help the ops guys with the up-down stuff, help the dev guys with the break-fix kind of traces that they need. Can I have one source of truth when it comes to performance and not getting context, and not getting fights about whose numbers are truthier, and I do at this point have to Just give a tip of the hat to Steve Goldberg for that work. Don't get into fights about whose numbers are. That's a losing battle. You end up fighting about, is it 80% or is it 77%? Who cares? Right? We have to get a problem fixed. Right? Is it offered as a service? So much of what's out there now is packaged software, and that's fine, but can I get it as a service if I need it? Can I do this on demand? Can I have elasticity in the cloud? I have a dev environment I'm going to light up. Can I send you statistics for 3 weeks and then give you back all that infrastructure? Because I don't want to have to light up servers and manage all this. And deploy into an on-demand cloud as part of your app. So not only do I not own the dev servers anymore, they're out in Amazon. Can I deploy technology into Amazon that will also close that loop and give you visibility to that running up there? Can my provider package it for me? This is big. You know, Rackspace, AT&T, Verizon, these are the guys who can actually build packages of things for you. You can say, look, I need 3 web servers, 2 database servers, and I need to have an MQ service set. Okay, and oh, by the way, I'm not monitoring turn on. Click. You know, they basically have to do an menu select and then provision, and they do that, and the solution be built that way. Right. Is it fully supported across all viewers? I want to know what my web performance is looking at my phone. I want to be able to do that with a native app. I want to be able to do it with something at least understands, okay, there's a mobile version of this view. Okay. Can I get everything, or is it just viewable? Can I actually take a server and turn it offline using the NPM solution on my phone? That'd be cool. Can I reboot something? Right. Or is it just telling me there's a red thing here, okay, go over here, take action? Now, extensible dashboards, can I build my own? Can I build them for different people? Can I access them programmatically? Can I match them up with my SharePoint, wiki page, any place I want to put it? Data, can I get to you from APIs? Can I put annotations in? These are huge. On the 15th of the month, I put up 3.7. Okay, well, I expect my performance to have a point of inflection. I want to put an annotation right on it. So everybody pulls up a report, goes on, oh, that's where 3.7 was released. And things did X, Y, or Z. Instrumentation. I get that you have out-of-the-box rules, but can I put more stuff on? Can I customize it for my needs? And can I do that easily? And can I do it programmatically? Maybe as part of your build and release process, you say, here's the new stuff we put out there. Or, better yet, it discovers, here's all the new stuff you put out there. Right? Actions. Once you've found something, can I do something more? Right? And we'll talk about this at the end of the presentation, but moving from monitoring to management. Thank you for telling me. What are you going to do about it? I already have an enterprise management system. I already have alerting. I already have a dashboard. What I need you, APM tool, to do is give me performance data to stick into that engine. So how are you going to do it? Are you going to send data raw, or are you going to send traps? Are you going to work with the overall infrastructure that currently you have? Right? But I want to get value out of you. I don't want to sign into this thing all the time to find out what's going on.
Did you mean existing tools there on
What
the
I say,
title?
exiting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Very good. I want to change that for the next.
Oh, no, one typo. There we go. This is a big one. Securable data. You're going to be plugged into my JVM.net. You're going to be listening to all these JVC calls. Are you going to do that in a way that's responsible? Can I control what's actually part of the data? Can I actually do name value pair rules? Like in a medical application, keep the practice name, that's okay, but don't keep the patient, I can't do that. Can I have granular controls over each method type? JVC, okay to keep, JMS not okay to keep, and vice versa. Can I have the names of the values? Show me that there was a password, don't show me what it was. Right? These are all rules that you can expect to get out of a solution that does this. But it's definitely something you want to ask a vendor. Hey, what's your security paradigm? Right? Being able to understand both code and system performance. A lot of times you're going to find, hey, this method's running a long time. Or, hey, this thing's occupying a lot of memory. Is that a problem? Well, how much operating system memory is being exposed to the JVM? So you have to look at both levels. You know, what's being provisioned at the server level, what's being consumed by the application container, what's the application code actually eating of that. So you have to understand that level of nesting. So do I know when I had a out of memory error that it was a VM setting, or was it that the server was out of memory? Scaling, can I go to hundreds or thousands of elements? Right. Can I support it without a big infrastructure? If it takes 5 servers to manage 5 servers, it's not much of a signal. Can I deploy it using my scripts? This is a big. You're not going to manage hundreds of thousands of elements without having some sort of automated actions going on in your IT architecture. So, can I build a shell script that deploys your stuff? Can I deploy it as part of my build? Can I make it part of an ad script that actually embeds it? Did that just this morning with a customer that hadn't played with it in a long time. Hasn't changed. Able to take corrective actions. Great, thank you for telling me this problem. Now what? Well, the first thing is, can you do something? Can you actually, if you find that you're running out of space, can you clean up temp files? Can you get rid of logs? Can you open up some resources to keep the thing running a little bit longer? Yeah, I'll get to it eventually, but right now, for the next couple of minutes, this would really help, because that's what I'm going to have to do anyhow. Can it ask me to approve things? Hey, right now your add cards are taking too long. We've noticed that you have thread exhaustion on this server. Do you want to take it out of rotation? Yes. All right. Can it understand different levels of security or severity? On a warm, what do I do? On a critical, what do I do? And again, maybe I don't want this to do anything. Maybe I just want this solution to tell something else that is my automation engine to do it, but I want to give it the data I have now. It's this server at this time. Here's the condition. Oh, great. And that thing says, on this server at this time, with this action or this condition, I'm supposed to do X, Y, or Z. So it can expose what it knows to something that can do something. Don't make me have to wake up 2 o'clock in the morning to delete log files. Okay. Monitoring end user platforms. Big push now, because now, again, you're trying to get to the end user, but the guy out there doing this. Can I report the performance of my site versus the time to deliver the results to end users? So my infrastructure versus network time. I need to know that break at a minimum. Does it understand content delivery networks? Some people come through them, some people do not. Right? You buy capacity by geographic region, by site. You might have an optimized site, not an optimized site. What's the difference between the two? Can it report performance to me by mobile versus non? How about users within mobile platforms, BlackBerry versus Android, etc.? By bandwidth and provider? Our site does not work very well when it's on a 40K or less line. How do we know that? Because we can separate the data. Maybe at that point now we go to a lighter version of the site. Can we look at users by geographic location? I had no idea we had that many users coming in from mainland China. Maybe that's a bad thing, but if that's actually transacting with you, maybe you want to consider getting CDN capacity to those various parts of the world. You can't know that unless you know where people are coming in. All right. So again, that was kind of the shopping list. Those are all the things when you think about APM that you got to consider. That's a lot of stuff. And that's what vendors like the ones that I've been working for are doing on a daily basis. That's what we are tasked with figuring out. Now, monitoring, APM, monitoring, APM management. How do you move from monitoring to managing? Well, first of all, monitoring is necessarily it's a passive action. It's you're observing a site, you're just taking information in, and it's retrospective in nature. You're always kind of looking back. Managing is an active adjustment and improvement, and it's prospective. It's trying to get ahead of the next thing that's coming along. So how do I get from the point of looking backwards passively to looking forwards and acting on that data that I have? Well, first is being able to put performance into the development lifecycle. And I know that's heretical, I shouldn't be saying such things, but as you're building the code, the first time you can run it, you should have instrumentation. Why? Because if you build it that way, you'll have baselines of performance. You'll say, when we first built this thing, we get it at a second and a half performance, we optimized it, now it's down to half a second. Yeah, yes. All right, but if that's hard to do, development isn't going to do it. So it's got to be easy. It's got to be part of their build. It's got to be part of the natural flow of what they're doing. Continuous measurement gives you that, as you're building it along, as you're getting to more and more capabilities and more pieces are being folded into the working application, it gives you that information along the way. The business can use that as part of their go live choice. Oftentimes, the go live is functionally ready to go. The go live does not include performance. Well, now it can. How are searches performing? When you're doing hundreds of moves a second. 2 seconds? No, we're not ready. Let's go back to 3. Right? And that can come along as part of the operations acceptance as well. I know that's also horrific. The ops can say, look, we can't take this unless it performs at least as well as the search we've already got out there. 3.6 was searches, we have performance measurement going on right now, and on the 3.6 release, it's a second and a half. You're telling me 3 seconds coming along, it's up to 2 seconds. Not happening. Again, prospective. But even if you do that, bad things are still going to happen. So despite everybody's best efforts, production slowdowns are going to happen. It's the nature of computers and software and what we do. So when that happens, the right data at your fingertips is your best friend. So you've got to have the right information to make the right action at the right time. Right? If you've learned as you build your code what instrumentation you have, what the right baseline performance is, and how far outside of normal you actually are, that gives you much better data to work with. You can also decide to fix things before they go falling down in the heap. All right, so if you're having to solve the same problem more than once, you have really two choices. You can automate a recovery action, but eventually you have to recur code. So until we know how to actually fix this thing, I need to have a recovery action. That's the, get rid of log files, clean up 10 file space, rotate the server, rotate that VM out of production, and put somebody else in. Those can be automated recoveries, but initially you have to be able to fix the solution, get rid of it. All right? So your APM trucks has to be able to do both, and do both naturally and quickly. Okay? So hopefully what I've done is I've kind of given you what APM in the marketplace is, the kinds of things that you need to consider as you look at these solutions. And I know that a lot of you have pieces of that, but now you have some sort of a more complete understanding of what APM involves. Certainly, I hope there are certain things out there that you say, whoa, I need that, I don't have it, let's figure out how to do it. And just throw it open for questions. And the last piece is moving from monitoring to management, really trying to get ahead of the next performance hit before it lands on them. So any questions about anything we talked about today?
Yeah, so one of the big topics of Velocity this year was rendering performance in browser and sort of job execution and kind of like the whole browser ecosystem as an application.
Sure.
Do you think APM vendors are going to start moving into instrumentation on the browser side, or either working with vendors or through extensions to try to, and obviously Dynatrace has done some of this, but more so to look at that sort of performance on an ongoing basis in the browser?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of work being done right now, and AppDynamics is the same, building instrumentation in the browser. The browser vendors also are starting to figure out, hey, maybe we should allow agent embedding to take place, so that there will be a Firefox embedded, there will be an Opera embedded, a Chrome embedded, that will provide sort of a general level of information to anyone who wants to ask for it through API calls or JavaScript to harvest it. It's huge, and there are a lot of things being done, to sort of trick out the browser a little bit to get first bite in, to get your first rendering done quickly, and then fill in the harder stuff later on. But yeah, absolutely. All the vendors are looking at that as kind of the ultimate determinant. It's sort of a mental response. How long did the user see what you actually produced?
Right, because a lot of the stuff that exists today is done on a synthetic basis, right?
Right.
You're testing it with your own browser instrumented, but if you can get the real user data,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but like more of an instrumented.
And then the challenge becomes backhauling all that data. Right. So there's a point at which you're like, okay, there may be 10 or 12 pages that are critical to my site of the 100 that we produce. Maybe 10 or 12 is good enough to give us visibility. But there's a big push. Yeah, it's a big push to get out of the browser.
That's the same challenge on the back end though as well, right?
Yeah.
APM vendors today are dealing with that issue with user data for all back-end pages.
Oh yeah. And it's always that balance of how much you're willing to pay to get this information.
Just beating it back to you, right?
Yeah. And then the logistics of doing that, the security, we run into situations where if you're instrumenting a browser in Europe, the place where that data has to go has to be in country. It can't be, there's cookies, or there's any kind of fingerprint of any kind, IP address. All right. It has to go to someplace that's in country, and then it has to be pass their security rules for the country before it can ever be rendered anywhere else. So it's getting a little weird, but that's when you think about it. There's a lot of information that flies around on cookies, as queries, as updated to clear pixels. But yeah, again, the browser is the ultimate determinant. An end user at the browser is going to determine the performance. No matter what you do in the back end to optimize it, that user still is the one who gives you the good or bad indicator.
Could you give me an example of maybe one of the larger, more recent clients and how far along in this wish list you've had people commit to?
Sure. Feature-wise, I'd say our biggest clients, what's that? You want to take a swipe at that?
No.
Our biggest client in terms of deployment is Netflix, but they're actually, I would say that, we hold them up as kind of our gold standard, but I'd say that's kind of a misnomer because you think of their applications actually pretty simple. I order a movie, I watch it, I pay money. Okay, it's like 3 verbs. But they do thousands and thousands of movie serves every night, and Sundays and weekends, and it's crazy. So they're high volume, and they've actually kind of skinnied down the metrics that they're collecting. Instead of hundreds of them, they're actually skinning it down to dozens, because they have thousands of servers, and they're constantly lighting up more and sunsetting others. But I'd say in terms of the actual deployments, the folks that we have that are probably pushing the boundary most, we have Edmund, which is doing a lot of work with us. A lot of the e-commerce sites are pushing hardest because there's direct financial implications of not doing it right. The rest of them are coming along, but the ones who have click to buy are the ones who are actually pushing it furthest. And designing response around the data is the biggest, that management side of the monitoring.
And in terms of actually like the wish list or shopping cart of APM features that you described, has anyone tried to get the whole lot implemented?
No, there's a lot of them that are coming along with, I have the shopping list all in one thing. The ones, where it starts to get to the point where you're really starting to get into, the integrations, the things that take the longest are, moving it to integrate with other tools, starting to build runbook automations off of it. Because there's always this trust factor. I can get to a point where I'm okay with you telling me about it, but I'm not okay with you doing that next thing, which is remediating. So I find that the integration tends to take the longest. APIs, harvesting data off and putting it other places tend to take longer. But a lot of these features will come up as you start with an APM solution that has these features in them. They're simultaneous. They're embedded. It's the human things that come after the fact that they tend to be longer adoptions. So run corrective actions, instrument data outside of the solution. Those are the ones that tend to come along first. But everybody's kind of on this journey on their own, and to the extent that we can direct them with features and things that keep them moving forward, all the better.
I suppose as a corollary, do you see like the human element is also having the most value or return on investment then?
Not sure.
Well, as a corollary, like you said that the human element is sort of the harder or longest to implement.
Yeah.
You also see that it's having the better return on investment or better value.
Well, we always get these discussions with return on investment for an investment in a solution like this, and you have to really be careful about how you're going to change the way people work, because they work with the way they work, and they've come to that over a long period of time. They're not going to come in and say, hey, you forget those scripts, we don't need them anymore, or we're moving over to a different task. So there's a lot of things when you put humans into the mix that are not technical decisions. They are more personnel decisions. We have to be careful about, hey, you don't need these 10 guys doing scripting anymore, you only need 3 of them because 7 people didn't rise up in arms. But you're right, because if you can remove humans, and you can remove their healthcare and their 401k and the cost of keeping them doing monitoring out of the equation, maybe you can have them do new features where they should be focused. That's when you start to see real returns, because that's a constant drag. If I have to pay somebody to sit there and hit F5 on this browser screen to make sure it works, or write a script to build a recovery action for something that I should be able to automate, that's a waste of time. I'd much rather have him helping build the next cool thing for our site, optimizing the search, figuring out how to beat that guy down the road who's selling the same thing I am. That's a better use of my money. And I can't do that with him until I get him off of these tasks. So it's more of a displacement, not a replacement. Let's focus better on what we're doing. Let's build the next better mousetrap and stop monitoring the site.
Nice.
So with that, I thank you for your time.
All right, thanks, Mike.